So the next piece of the story was Dave Gaba had a sabbatical coming up. So this is so great about Stanford. Harvard does not have this. At Stanford, every 7 years they get a sabbatical. They can go off for 6 months, and I don't know if they're paid in full, but I think so. And he had 6 months to take off. So I said, well, geez, why don't you come to Boston and bring your simulator, and we'll put a bunch of people through the program here and see what happens. He agreed, and he came for 3 months, and we actually put him up. The MGH anesthesia department actually owned an apartment right next door that was left to it by one of the department members, one of the anesthesiologists. So Dave and Deanna, his wife, came here and were put up in that apartment, and we set up his simulator, which was like half of a mannequin, at an old lithotripsy suite at the then Deaconess Hospital. And the lithotripsy suite was not functioning anymore, and it's a neat room because it has a control room. So we actually had a control room, and we had the mannequin on a table and basically an operating room. And over the course of about 10 or 12 weeks, we ran 70 people through, anesthesiologists, residents, and CRNAs, all went through this program that Dave put on. Steve Howard was here too, by the way. And then people generally, I think we must have done a survey, I can't remember, but people thought this is really cool, we ought to do it. So I went back to the anesthesia chiefs and said, well, let's see if we can get a grant. And they agreed that they would get behind this, but I had to get the money to build it. So the next piece of this story is, where did we get the money? Again, that's got a really long thread, but this is the way things happen, is through serendipity. Ed Troutman, the student I had mentioned way back from MIT, way back in the 70s, had sat at dinner from the AMI, the Association for the Advancement of Medical Instrumentation. I think he was still a student at the time. And they had a dinner. It's a clinical engineering organization. And he was at the dinner, and he sat next to Julius Ripple, who was an industrialist. I forget what he did, but he had a foundation, the Fannie E. Ripple Foundation. And he got to know Ed, and Julius Ripple's foundation funded for $4,000 a piece of the prototype of the anesthesia machine that we came to develop. So that was our connection to the Ripple Foundation. The Ripple Foundation also funded some of the critical incident work, and none of this was in their charter. They funded, as I recall, women's health, cancer care, cardiovascular disease, but this personal connection is what made that happen. Now, Julius Ripple had died, and his nephew, I think it was Eric, was then running the foundation. So here, roll ahead to the 93, this was, I went back to the Ripple Foundation and proposed that they fund the building of the simulation center, which again was not in their charter. They're based in New Jersey. I can't remember exactly how it happened, but I think I flew down there, and I might have gone with somebody else, maybe with Dick Kitts, or maybe with Ron Newbar, I don't remember. And I went down there and presented to them, and they agreed to fund this. But they only fund hospitals. So we had to get one of the hospitals to take the money for all of the hospitals. So Mass General agreed to take the money, and Ripple funded this with $250,000 to build out the space and buy the first mannequin. And so that's how it started. And actually, Ann Prestopino, who's still the senior VP at the MGH, she was the one who signed the document and took the risk, because again, there was no policy, or it was just something that we did. And again, it's a wonderful thing about that environment, particularly at MGH, that it takes those kinds of risks. It doesn't get hung up entirely on protocol, and it'll, if you will, not break rules, but it'll really think out of the box. And this is one of those instances. So all of the hospitals shared in this together, and we got a construction company. Another critical piece of this was where to put it. Where do you put a center that 5 hospitals are going to share? 5 hospitals that the hospitals themselves are competitive. If it had been at any one hospital, which it could have been, the others wouldn't have come. I knew that. If it were on the Harvard campus, because the other hospitals are all around the medical school, and Mass General is about a couple miles away. If it was at Mass General, they wouldn't come, and if it was there, MGH wouldn't go. And actually, we could have gotten free space, or really cheap space, at the Deaconess Hospital then. But we mapped out the space in Boston, downtown Boston, that seemed to be geographically centric, or central to all the hospitals. It wouldn't look too close to any of them. And we scouted out a whole bunch of real estate. We went into this office building that was like dirt cheap. It was a brand new building. There was a real estate slump. So we got this for $13 a square foot for 2,500 square feet, which was just really cheap in this really nice office building. And we built a simulation center. Now, this was the first one of its kind other than what was going on at Stanford and Gainesville. They were where things were developed. They would develop the mannequins. Again, these two different kinds of mannequins. And what we were building was a place where we would train people. It was really all about training and, of course, doing some research. And that's how it got built. The anesthesia departments funded, in a way, they paid the rent. And they did that because collectively they worked together, and every year they'd put on a review course, an anesthesia review course. And they'd make some money from that. And they would plow it back, and usually to research and to their then joint graduation. In this case, they agreed to use their joint funds to pay for the rent.